history of the world continued. 1732 AD. Genoa regained control of Corsica. 1733 AD. James Oglethorpe establishes a colony at Savannah, founding the state of Georgia. John Kay invents a flying shuttle loom. Augustus II of Poland dies. France persuades Polish nobles to restore Stanislaus I, but Austria and Russia demand that Augustus' son, Frederick Augustus of Saxony, succeed his father. In the War of Polish Succession, they invade Poland. 1734 AD. Persia and the Ottoman Empire go to war. France and Spain defeat Austrian armies in Naples and Parma. Danzig falls to the invading Russian army, but Stanislaus I escapes to Prussia. 1735 AD. William Pitt is elected MP for Old Sarum. The Treaty of Vienna ends the War of the Polish Succession, and Augustus III is established on the Polish throne. Russia allies with the Persian Nadir Quli against the Ottoman Empire. Nadir defeats the Ottomans at Bagravand and takes Tiflis. John Harson develops his chronometer. Linnaeus publishes Systema Naturae, the origin of modern classification of plants and animals. 1736 AD. Shah Abbas III dies, and Nadir Quli succeeds him. Claudius Aymund performs the first successful appendectomy. Freemasonry is condemned by Pope Clement XII. Statutes against witchcraft are repealed in England. Emperor Yongzheng dies and is succeeded by his son, Jianglong. 1737 AD. Benjamin Franklin creates the Philadelphia Police Force, the first of its kind. The Licensing Act orders all plays to submit to the Lord Chamberlain's censorship. Gian Gaston de Medici dies, last of his line. The Grand Duchy of Tuscany passes to Francis of Lorraine, whilst Lorraine passes to Stanislaus I of Poland as a reward for renouncing his claim to the Polish throne. 1738 AD. Orsova falls to the Ottomans, who drive the imperial troops back to Belgrade. Jean H. L. Ory imposes the corvée, compulsory labour, to construct roads in France. John and Charles Wesley form the Methodist Society. 1739 AD. Dick Turpin is hanged at York. Shah Nadir of Persia sacks Delhi, drastically diminishing Mughal power in India. Nadir seizes the Kohinoor diamond. Emperor Charles VI makes peace with the Ottomans by the Treaty of Belgrade, ceding the city to the Ottomans. is seized by Admiral Vernon. 1740 AD. Frederick William I of Prussia dies and is succeeded by his son Frederick II the Great, who invades Silesia. Emperor Charles VI dies. He is succeeded in his kingdoms by his daughter Maria Theresa, but Saxony, Bavaria, and Spain dispute her right to succeed, and the War of the Austrian Succession begins. Tsarina Anna dies, and is succeeded by her infant great-nephew, Ivan VI. 1741 AD. Frederick the Great defeats the Austrians at Mollwitz and captures Brig, Nice, Glatz, and Olmütz before the British mediate. Prague is occupied by a French, Bavarian, and a Saxon army. Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great, deposes Tsar Ivan VI and rules herself. 1742 AD. Anders Celsius develops the centigrade thermometer system. Elector Charles Albert of Bavaria is elected to the vacant title of Holy Roman Emperor. Robert Walpole resigns as Prime Minister, replaced by the Earl of Wilmington. Prussia defeats the Austrians at Chousitz before signing Treaty of Berlin with Austria, gaining Upper and Lower Silesia. Britain and Prussia sign the Treaty of Westminster, safeguarding Hanover. 1743 AD. George II leads a multinational pragmatic army to victory over the French at Detention. Pogroms of Jews occur in Russia. Persia and the Ottoman Empire go to war. Austria and Saxony ally, whilst Bavaria is conquered by Austria. 1744 AD. Frederick the Great invades Saxony and Bohemia, taking Prague before being driven back to Saxony. Maria Theresa launches a series of pogroms in Moravia and Bohemia against the Jews. 1745 AD. Emperor Charles VII dies. Francis of Lorraine, Grand Duke of Tuscany and husband of Maria Theresa, is elected the new emperor. The French defeat an army led by the Duke of Cumberland at Fontenoy and advance into the Austrian Netherlands. The Prussians defeat the Austrians and Saxons at Hohenfriedberg and the Austrians at Sur. Charles Edward Stuart lands on Erskine, proclaiming his father king. He gains support from various Scottish clans, takes Edinburgh and is victorious at Prestonpans, but loses his nerve on reaching Derby and withdraws. 1746 AD. The retreating Jacobites are victorious at Falkirk, but are routed by Cumberland at Culloden. The young pretender escapes, and helped by Flora MacDonald, reaches Skye, from where he returns to France. Cumberland severely represses the Scots, and the wearing of tartan is outlawed. Canaletto moves to of Spain dies and is succeeded by his son Ferdinand VI. France defeats Austria at Doqquz and takes the Austrian Netherlands. 1747 AD. The Republic of the United Provinces is overthrown by the French, and William IV of Orange-Nassau resumes the post of stadtholder. Prussia and Sweden form a defensive alliance. The French defeat an Anglo-Dutch army at Lauffeld. Shah Nadir is murdered in Afghanistan. His nephew Adil succeeds him, whilst Ahmed Shah Durrani takes advantage of the situation to establish an independent Afghanistan. Lord Lovat is beheaded for Jacobitism on Tower Hill, the last man to be executed there. 1748 AD. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle ends the War of the Austrian Succession with a stalemate peace. This gives general recognition to the Pragmatic Sanction and the Prussian conquest of Silesia. 1749 AD. Thomas Chippendale opens a workshop. Admiral Anson reforms the Royal Navy. Henry Fielding publishes Tom Jones. 1750 AD. Henry Fielding and his brother John found the Bow Street Runners. Thomas Gray's elegy, written in a country churchyard, is written in Stoke Poses. The Jockey Club is founded in the Star and Garter Coffee House, Pall Mall. J.S. Bach dies. João V of Portugal dies and is succeeded by his son, José I, who appoints the Marquis of Pombal as his chief minister. Pombal strips the Inquisition of its power. 1751 AD. China invades Tibet. Robert Clive seizes Arcot from the French. Stadtholder William IV dies and is succeeded by his infant son William V. Britain adopts January the 1st as the beginning of the new year instead of 25th March. 1752 AD. Britain adopts the Gregorian calendar system. 11 days disappear from September. Benjamin Franklin invents the lightning conductor. Ahmad Shah of Afghanistan takes Lahore. Spain and the Holy Roman Empire sign the Treaty of Ironsheds. 1753 AD. Sir Hans Sloane dies. His legacy of books and collections are used to found the British Museum and the British Library. The Marriage Act forbids unlicensed weddings in Britain. The Jewish Naturalization Act seeks to remove disabilities for Jews in Britain, but the hostility it engenders leads to its repeal. 1754 AD. The Royal and Ancient Golf Club is founded at St Andrews and codifies the rules of the sport. William Cookworthy pioneers English porcelain production. The first iron rolling mill is built in Fareham, Hampshire. In North America, the Albany Convention is convened by several colonies, and the Iroquois is to defeat two expeditions led by George Washington. The convention agrees to Franklin's proposal for the union of the 13 colonies. Sultan Mahmud I dies while dismounting from his horse and is succeeded by his brother Osman III. 1755 AD. Casanova is imprisoned in Venice for spying. Pascal de Pauli is elected general in Corsica and leads a revolt against Genoa. In North America, General Braddock is killed in the Battle of the Wilderness as the French rout a British expedition, but the French are subsequently defeated at Lake George. Lisbon is devastated by an earthquake and a tidal wave. 30,000 die. 1756 AD. A porcelain factory is founded at Sèvres. John Smeaton builds a new Eddystone lighthouse. England and Prussia ally by the Treaty of Westminster. Minorca surrenders to Franco-Spanish forces after Admiral Byng breaks off a naval action. Britain declares war on France, but Montcalm drives the British from the Great Lakes. Siraj ud Dowlah, a French ally, seizes Calcutta, imprisoning 146 Britons in a small guardroom, the Black Hole of Calcutta. According to English propaganda, only 23 emerge alive the next morning. 7 years' war erupts as Prussia invades Saxony, which has allied with France, Austria, Russia, and Sweden against it. 1757 AD. John Campbell invents the sextant. Ahmed Shah of Afghanistan takes Delhi and the Punjab. Robert Clive recovers Calcutta and defeats Siraj ud Dowlah at Plassey. For his role in losing Minorca, Admiral Byng is shot pour encourager les autres at Portsmouth. Frederick the Great defeats the Austrians at Prague, but is defeated at Cologne before further victories at Rossbach and Leuthen. Cumberland is routed by the French at Hastenbeck and is forced by the Convention of Klosterzeven to surrender Hanover to them. Sultan Osman III dies and is succeeded by his cousin Mustafa III. 1758 AD. Britain promises assistance to Prussia by the Treaty of London. Samuel Johnson finds the Idler. Clive becomes governor of Bengal. An English army fighting for Frederick II of Prussia defeats the French at Greville, and Frederick crushes the Russians at Zorndorf, but is defeated by the Austrians at Hochkirch. Fort Duquesne is captured from the French by George Washington and John Forbes and renamed Pittsburgh. 1759 AD. Handel dies. Guadeloupe is captured by the British. Samuel Johnson publishes Roslus. The French defeat Brunswick at Brunswick, but are defeated by an Anglo-Prussian army at Minden. Ferdinand VI of Spain dies, and is succeeded by his half-brother Charles III. Frederick the Great is defeated by an Austro-Russian army at Gunnersdorf. General Wolfe defeats Montcalm on the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec. Both generals die in battle. Quebec falls to the British. Admiral Hawke destroys a French squadron off Quiberon. 1760 AD. Earl Ferrers is hanged at Tyburn, the last peer to be executed in Britain. Austria defeats Prussia at Landshut, but is defeated at Liegnitz. Amherst captures Montreal. Russian troops capture and burn Berlin. George II dies and is succeeded by his grandson, George III. Prussia defeats the Austrians at Torgau. John Harrison develops his H4 chronometer. 1761 AD. Ahmed Shah of Afghanistan defeats the Marathas at Panipat. Pondicherry, the French base in southern India, falls to Sir Eyre Coote. France and Spain invade Portugal. Portugal asks for British help. Spain and the Bourbon Italian states ally with France against Britain. 1762 AD. Tsarina Elizabeth dies and is succeeded by her nephew Peter III, who withdraws from the 7 Years' War and returns Pomerania to Prussia. St. Vincent, Martinique, Grenada, and St. Lucia seized by the British under Rodney. Jean-Jacques Rousseau writes The Social Contract. Sweden and Prussia ally by the Treaty of Hamburg. Peter is assassinated on behalf of his wife, who succeeds him as Catherine II. 1763 AD. The Treaty of Paris ends the 7 Years' War. Spain cedes Florida to Britain. The Almanac de Gotha is first published. Augustus III of Poland and Saxony dies. He is succeeded in Saxony only by his son Frederick Christian, who also dies, and is succeeded by his son Frederick Augustus III. 1764 AD. James Hargreaves invents the spinning jenny. Stanislas Poniatowski is elected to the vacant Polish throne. Hyder Ali takes Mysore. Sir Hector Munro defeats the Nawab of Oudh at Buxar and takes control of Bengal. Ex-Tsar Ivan VI is murdered in prison. 1765 AD. Frederick the Great founds the Bank of Prussia. The Stamp Act imposes taxation on the American colonists, much to their disgust. Emperor Francis I dies and is succeeded by his son Joseph II. The auto da fe is abolished in Lisbon. 1766 AD. On the death of ex-king Stanislas, Duke of Lorraine, the duchy reverts to France. The Stamp Act is repealed, but the Declaratory Act affirms the right of Parliament to tax the American colonists. Frederick V of Denmark dies and is succeeded by his son Christian VII. 1767 AD. Siam is invaded by the Burmese. Neville Maskelyne, the Astronomer Royal, issues the first nautical almanac. Clive Joshua Reynolds as the first president. The first edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica is published. The Gurkha king, Prithvi Narayan Shah, makes Nepal a unitary kingdom. Corsica is bought by the French from Genoa. Austria renounces all claims to Silesia. 1769 AD. Austria occupies the Lvov and Sips regions of Poland. Frederick the Great and Emperor Joseph II meet at Nice to discuss the partition of Poland. Richard Arkwright develops the spinning frame. James Watt patents a steam engine. Josiah Wedgwood opens his pottery works at Etruria. Wellington, Napoleon, Ney, and Soult are born. 1770 AD. Joseph Cugnot constructs a steam-powered road vehicle in France. Lord North replaces Grafton as Prime Minister. The Boston Massacre, a brawl between civilians and troops, leaves 3 dead. All taxes, bar that on tea, on the American colonists are repealed. An Anglo-Spanish dispute over the Falklands is resolved by French mediation. Captain James Cook lands at Botany Bay, Australia. A Russian fleet defeats the Ottomans at the Battle of Chesme. 1771 AD. The Crimea is conquered by Russian Cossacks. Duke Charles Emmanuel III of Savoy abolishes serfdom. Adolphus Frederick of Sweden dies and is succeeded by his son Gustav III. The Marathas drive the Afghans from Delhi. 1772 AD. The Danish nobility rebel against Count Johann von Struensee, who has held absolute power for a year, torturing and beheading him. George III secures the passage of the Royal Marriages Act to control whom the royal family may marry. Russia, Prussia, and Austria perform the first partition of Poland. Gustav III of Sweden re-establishes absolute monarchy. Carl Wilhelm Scheele discovers oxygen. Priestley discovers it independently in 1774. Daniel Rutherford, Joseph Priestley, Henry Cavendish, and Carl Wilhelm Scheele independently discover nitrogen. 1773 AD. Emperor Joseph II expels the Jesuits, prompting Pope Clement XIV to dissolve the order. Tea is thrown into the sea in the protest known as the Boston Tea Party, as a protest against the tea duty. The first stock exchange opens in London. Captain Cook enters the Antarctic Circle. Denmark cedes Oldenburg to Russia. Thomas Pritchard constructs the Iron Bridge at Coalbrookdale. 1774 AD. The coercive acts against Massachusetts includes closing the port of Boston. Lord North is robbed by a highwayman at Chiswick. Louis XV of France dies and is succeeded by his grandson, Louis XVI. Sultan Mustafa III dies and is succeeded by his brother, Abdul Hamid I. Russia acquires the northern Black Sea coast by the Treaty Georgia convenes, deciding to ban imports from and exports to Britain. 1775 AD. Paul Revere rides to Lexington to warn of British troop movements. The American War of Independence opens. The colonists win victories at Concord, Fort Ticonderoga, and Groyne Point. The Second Continental Congress convenes, and John Hancock is elected its president. The British defeat the rebels at Bunker Hill. 1776 AD. Adam Smith publishes The Wealth of Nations. The St. Ledger is first run, founded by Colonel Barry St. Ledger. Gregory Potemkin organizes a Russian Black Sea fleet. Russia and Denmark signed the Treaty of Copenhagen. The American colonists issue the Declaration of Independence. After a defeat at Long Island and on Lake Champlain, they score a major victory at Trenton. 1777 AD. Spain and Portugal settle their differences over their South American colonies. The Americans are victorious at Princeton, Ridgefield, and Bennington, but lose at the Brandywine and at Germantown before victory at Bemis Heights provokes Burgoyne to surrender at Saratoga. Elector Maximilian III of Bavaria dies with no direct heir. The electorship passes to Count Karl Theodore of the Palatine. 1778 AD. Joseph Bramah patents an improved water closet. Captain Cook discovers and names the Sandwich Islands. France signs treaties of alliance with the United States. Frederick the Great opens the War of the Bavarian Succession by invading Bohemia. The British take Savannah. 1779 AD. Samuel Crompton develops the spinning mule. Captain Cook is killed by natives in Hawaii. The Oaks is first run, named after the house at Epsom leased by the 12th Earl of Derby. Warren Hastings sends British troops against the Marathas. The peace of tension settles the War of the Bavarian Succession. British troops are defeated at Baton Rouge by an augmented American army. Spain declares war on Britain. 1780 AD. Admiral Rodney defeats the Spanish of Cape St. Vincent. Lord George Gordon whips up anti-Catholic hysteria in London into the Gordon riots. The Americans are defeated at Camden, but are victorious at King's Mountain. Emperor Joseph II abolishes serfdom in Bohemia and Hungary. Maria Theresa dies and is succeeded in Habsburg territories by her son, Emperor Joseph. The Derby is first run. Peruvian Indians rebel against Spanish rule, led by the Inca descendant Tupac Amaru, who is executed next year as the revolt is suppressed. 1781 AD. William Herschel discovers Uranus. Warren Hastings plunders the treasure of the Nabob of Oud. Emperor Joseph II grants religious tolerance in the Holy Roman Empire and abolishes serfdom in Austria. General Cornwallis surrenders to the Americans at Yorktown, ending British military operations operations in America. 1782 AD. Spain captures Minorca from Britain and completes the conquest of Florida. Lord North resigns as Prime Minister and is succeeded by Rockingham. On his death, Shelburne replaces him, and Pitt the Younger becomes Chancellor of the Exchequer. Admiral Rodney defeats the French at the Battle of the Saints. Rama I founds the Shakri dynasty as kings of Siam, ruling from Bangkok. The Royal George sinks off Portsmouth with the loss of 800 men. 1783 AD. Shelburne resigns as Prime Minister, succeeded by Portland, whose government falls. Pitt the Younger becomes Prime Minister at the age of 24. Henry Court develops a method of puddling iron. The Treaty of Versailles recognizes American independence and cedes Florida to Spain. The Montgolfier brothers make the first balloon flight at Annonay. Potemkin annexes the Crimea for Russia. 1784 AD. Turkey is forced to accept the Russian annexation of the Crimea by the Treaty of Constantinople. John Wesley draws up his deed of declaration, providing for the continuance of the Methodist movement. A revolt in Transylvania persuades Emperor Joseph II to suspend the Hungarian constitution. The East India Company is put under government control. 1785 AD. Jean Blanchard and John Jeffreys cross the English Channel by balloon. The Daily Universal Register, later named The Times, is founded. The Prince of Wales secretly weds Maria Fitzherbert. Warren Hastings resigns as Governor-General of India. The Diamond Necklace affair discredits Marie Antoinette and leads to the arrest of Cardinal de Rohan. Austria and Holland settle their differences by the Treaty of Fontainebleau. 1786 AD. Jacques Balmat and Michel Gabriel Paccard make the first ascent of Mont Blanc. Penang is ceded by the Rajah of Kedah to Britain. Frederick the Great of Prussia dies and is succeeded by his nephew Frederick William II. 1787 AD. The Marylebone Cricket Club is founded, and Thomas Lord opens his first cricket ground. Warren Hastings is impeached by Edmund Burke. George Washington chairs a constitutional convention in America, which draws up the Constitution. Russia and Turkey go to war. Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey are the first states to join the Union of the United States. 1788 AD. William Symington develops a workable steamboat. The first fleet lands convicts at Botany Bay, and Sydney is founded to house them. The trial for corruption of Warren Hastings begins. Gustavus III of Sweden invades Russian Finland. Louis XVI is persuaded to summon the Estates General in France. George III suffers a bout of mental illness. 1789 AD. Sultan Abdul Hamid I is poisoned and succeeded by his nephew Selim III. George Washington is elected the first President of the United States. A mutiny takes place, led by Fletcher Christian on HMS Bounty. Christian and the mutineers settle on Pitcairn Island. Captain Bligh, set adrift, navigates across 3,600 miles of ocean to Timor. George III recovers from his illness. The Estate General meet at Versailles. The Third Estate declares itself a national assembly and swears not to dissolve until a constitution is granted. The Paris mob storm the Bastille, starting a revolution. Feudalism is abolished in France. The National Assembly issues the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Louis XVI and his family are forced to go to Paris as the mob attacks Versailles. Belgrade and Bucharest are taken by Austria. 1790 AD. Emperor Joseph II dies and is succeeded by his brother Leopold II. Louis XVI accepts a revolutionary constitution. Philadelphia becomes the American capital. Alexander Hamilton founds Washington, D.C. 1791 AD. Marie Harel develops Camembert cheese. The Observer begins publication. Boswell's Life of Johnson and Tom Paine's Rights of Man are published. John Wesley dies. The Canada Constitutional Act splits Canada into Upper and Lower Canada, with legislatures in Ontario and Quebec. Louis XVI flees Paris, but is captured at Varennes and forced to return. Mozart's The Magic Flute is first performed. The Bill of Rights, consisting of the first 10 amendments to the American Constitution, is codified. 1792 AD. Denmark abjures slavery. The Democratic, Republican, and Federalist parties are founded in America. Russia and Turkey make the Peace of Jassy. Cornwallis defeats Tipu Sultan of Mysore at Seringapatam and takes half of Mysore. Emperor Leopold II dies and is succeeded by his son Francis II. Gustavus III of Sweden is assassinated in Stockholm Opera House and is succeeded by his son Gustavus IV. Prussia and Austria ally against France, which declares war on them and Sardinia. Prussia takes Verdun, but the French are victorious at Valmy and conquer the Austrian Netherlands. The Paris mob storms the Tuileries. The Swiss Guard fire on them. Louis XVI is imprisoned in the Temple, and the National Convention abolishes the monarchy. Louis XVI is imprisoned. The Jacobins seize power, and a guillotine is put into use.